They said I was barren for 10 years, but the truth was far more devastating. My name is Catherine Ashford, and I became Queen of England at 17 years old when I married King Edward V in 1530. I was young, fertile, and raised to understand that my sole purpose was to produce an heir to secure the Tudor succession. But after a decade of marriage, there were no children, no pregnancies, not even a single miscarriage to give us hope. The physicians examined me repeatedly, declared my womb healthy, my cycles regular, everything as it should be. The problem, the terrible secret that everyone at court whispered but no one dared speak aloud, was not with me. It was with the king. Edward was impotent, unable to consummate our marriage in any meaningful way, unable to produce the heir England desperately needed, and in 1540, faced with political pressure, threats of invasion, and his own mortality at age 42, my husband made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. He chose the strongest man in the castle, a blacksmith named Thomas Garrett, who stood 7 feet tall and could bend iron with his bare hands, and he ordered me to conceive a child with this man to save the dynasty. This is the story of how a king's weakness, a queen's duty, and a blacksmith's unexpected gentleness created the most complicated royal succession in English history, and how the child born from that dark arrangement would eventually sit on the throne of England with eyes no one could deny, belonged to someone other than the king. Let me take you back to 1530, to the day I arrived at Westminster Palace as a bride barely old enough to understand what marriage truly meant. The Ashford family was minor nobility from Kent, wealthy enough to be respectable but not powerful enough to refuse when the king's advisors came seeking a bride for the young monarch. Edward had inherited the throne at 19 when his father died suddenly, and at 22 he needed a wife to produce heirs and stabilize the succession. I was chosen for my youth, my proven fertility and my bloodline. Every Ashford woman for 3 generations had borne at least 6 children, and my political insignificance. A bride with no powerful family connections meant no complicated alliances, no foreign entanglements, just a womb to carry royal children. I was 17. Educated in the basics of running a household, taught to embroider and play the virginals, instructed in the art of being decorative and obedient. No one had prepared me for what marriage to an impotent king would actually entail. The wedding was magnificent, held in Westminster Abbey with all the pageantry England could muster. I wore cloth of gold, a dress so heavy I could barely walk, and a crown of pearls and sapphires. Edward was handsome in his royal robes, tall and well-formed, with the auburn hair and pale complexion of his Tudor ancestors. He smiled at me during the ceremony, and I thought perhaps this arranged marriage might become something bearable, maybe even pleasant. The wedding night revealed the truth. Edward came to my chambers as custom dictated, dismissed the witnesses who had observed us getting into bed together, and then sat on the edge of the mattress with his head in his hands. "Catherine," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something before we proceed, something the physicians have confirmed but that we've kept secret from everyone, including your family." My heart was pounding. I was terrified, innocent, with only the vaguest understanding of what was supposed to happen between husband and wife. "What is it, Your Majesty?" "I cannot," he gestured vaguely at himself, at me, at the bed. "I cannot perform the marital act. I have tried with others before our marriage, women my advisors provided to test my capacity. Nothing happens. My body does not respond as it should." I stared at him, not understanding. "You mean you don't want to?" "I want to desperately. The succession depends on it. But wanting and being able are different things. The physicians call it impotence. My body is unwilling even when my mind is determined. So we won't consummate the marriage. Not tonight, perhaps not ever, unless the physicians find some treatment that works. But we must pretend, Catherine. Everyone must believe our marriage is normal, that we are trying to conceive. The stability of the kingdom depends on the appearance of a functioning royal marriage. That first year, we maintained the fiction. Edward would visit my chambers regularly, stay for an appropriate length of time, and leave. The court assumed we were attempting to produce an heir. The physicians continued their examinations of me, declaring me healthy and fertile. When no pregnancy occurred after 12 months, rumors began to circulate that perhaps I was barren after all, that the Ashford fertility was a myth, that the king had chosen poorly. By the second year, the pressure intensified. Edward's advisors began suggesting he consider setting me aside, finding a new wife, someone whose womb would prove more receptive. The king refused, not out of love for me. We barely knew each other, but out of pride. Admitting the marriage had failed meant admitting his own failure, and that was politically impossible. The third year brought medical interventions. Physicians from across Europe were summoned to examine both of us. I endured humiliating procedures, internal examinations, dietary restrictions, herbal treatments designed to increase fertility. Edward underwent his own treatments, potions and exercises, and even surgical interventions that left him in agony but produced no results. His body remained unresponsive. By the fourth year, I had resigned myself to a childless existence. I threw myself into other pursuits, learning to manage the household accounts, studying history and politics, becoming more educated than most queens before me. Edward and I developed a strange friendship born of shared disappointment. We would dine together and discuss philosophy, theology, the governance of the realm. He valued my opinions, sought my advice on matters of state. We were companions, even affectionate in a platonic way, but we were not husband and wife in any real sense. The fifth year, 1535, brought political crisis. France and Spain were forming an alliance, threatening England's security. Edward's cousin Richard began making noise about the succession, suggesting that if the king remained childless, he as the nearest male relative should be named heir. Other nobles started positioning themselves for the power struggle that would inevitably follow Edward's death without issue. "We need an heir," Edward told me one evening in 1536. We were in his private study, away from courtiers and servants. "The kingdom is becoming unstable. Richard is gathering supporters. If I die without a son, there will be civil war." "I know," I said quietly. "I've heard the rumors, seen the way nobles are choosing sides. The physicians say there's nothing more they can do for either of us. Your womb is perfect. My body is useless. So what do we do?" He was silent for a long time, staring into the fireplace. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "We could arrange for you to conceive with another man." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "An heir doesn't have to be mine biologically, Catherine. It just has to be legally mine. If you conceived a child, and I claimed it as my own, no one would question it. Everyone expects us to produce children. They'd celebrate the birth, never knowing the truth. You want me to commit adultery, to betray my marriage vows? Our marriage vows are already a fiction. We've never truly been married in the eyes of God because we've never consummated the union. What I'm proposing is a practical solution to a political problem." I felt tears burning. "Edward, I can't. I won't. This is monstrous. More monstrous than letting the kingdom descend into civil war. More monstrous than watching thousands die in a succession crisis. I'm trying to save England, Catherine, and I'm asking for your help." I refused that night, and for months afterward. But the political situation continued to deteriorate. By 1538, Richard had assembled a significant faction of nobles who openly questioned Edward's fitness to rule. There were whispers of rebellion, of forcing Edward to abdicate in favor of his cousin. The king's advisors grew more desperate, more insistent that something had to be done. In early 1540, Edward summoned me again to his study. This time his primary advisor, Lord Chancellor Thomas Cromwell, was present. "Your Majesty, Catherine." Cromwell began without preamble. "The situation has become critical. Intelligence reports suggest Richard is planning to move against the king within the year. Our only hope of preventing civil war is to produce an heir, a son who would supersede Richard in the succession and eliminate his justification for rebellion." "I've heard this argument before," I said coldly, "and I've given my answer." "The Queen has been reluctant," Edward said carefully, "and I understand her moral objections. But Catherine, I'm not asking any more. I'm ordering you as your king and husband to do what is necessary for England. You can't order me to lie with another man. This is unconscionable. I can and I am." Cromwell leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we've taken the liberty of selecting an appropriate candidate. Someone strong, healthy, unlikely to speak of the arrangement afterward due to his social position. Someone whose physical attributes would make the child's appearance believable as the king's offspring." "Who?" I demanded. "Thomas Garrett, the master blacksmith. He's unmarried, physically powerful, intelligent enough to understand discretion. and bound to the crown by his position. He's also, Cromwell paused delicately, significantly larger and stronger than average, which increases the likelihood of successful conception. They were talking about this as if I were a broodmare, as if the blacksmith were a prize stallion, as if producing an heir were simply a matter of matching appropriate physical specimens. I felt sick. I won't do this. You will, Edward's voice was steel. I've tried asking. I've tried explaining. Now I'm commanding. You will spend time with Thomas Garrett under supervised but private conditions until conception occurs. The child will be declared mine, raised as the legitimate heir, and the succession will be secured. And if I refuse, then I'll have the marriage annulled on grounds of your barrenness, which everyone already believes anyway. I'll marry someone else, and you'll be sent to a convent for the rest of your life. At least this way you remain queen. You raise the child you bear, and you continue to have influence and comfort. The choice is a stark one, Catherine, but it's the only choice I'm offering. I looked between Edward and Cromwell, searching for any sign of compassion, any willingness to reconsider this horrific plan. I found none. They were desperate men making desperate decisions, and I was simply a tool to be used for the kingdom's survival. When do you want this to begin? I asked, my voice hollow. Cromwell answered, We've already spoken to Garrett. He's been informed of his duty and has agreed. We've prepared a private chamber in the East Wing, away from the main court. You'll be taken there tomorrow evening after supper. How many times? As many as necessary until pregnancy is confirmed. The physicians estimate it could take one encounter or several. We'll continue until we have certainty. I stood, my legs shaking. May I be excused, Your Majesty? Edward wouldn't meet my eyes. Yes, go, rest. Remember that you're doing this for England. I returned to my chambers and vomited into a basin. My ladies-in-waiting assumed I was ill and put me to bed with warm compresses and soothing teas. I lay there in the darkness and tried to comprehend what was being demanded of me. I was 27 years old, a virgin despite 10 years of marriage, and tomorrow I would be forced to conceive a child with a man I'd never even spoken to. A blacksmith who worked in the castle forges and was known throughout the court as the giant because of his massive size. I tried to imagine it, tried to imagine him, and couldn't. The terror was too overwhelming. They brought me to the chamber the next evening as promised. It was a small room furnished with a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a fireplace already burning against the March cold. The walls were thick stone, the windows shuttered, creating an isolated space where privacy was guaranteed. Lord Cromwell escorted me personally, dismissed my ladies-in-waiting at the door. The Queen will be attended to appropriately, he told them. Return to her regular chambers and wait there. He opened the door and gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside, my whole body trembling. Thomas Garrett was already there, standing near the fireplace. My first thought, the only thought my terrified mind could form, was, Dear God, he's impossibly large. The descriptions had not been exaggerations. Thomas stood at least 7 feet tall, perhaps more, with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill the room. He wore simple clothing, a rough woolen shirt and leather breeches, both straining to contain the massive frame beneath. His arms were thick with muscle from years of forge work, his hands enormous and scarred from handling hot metal. His face was weathered and bearded, with dark eyes that looked at me with an expression I couldn't immediately read. Fear, sympathy, resignation. He stood with his hands clasped in front of him in a posture of submission, but there was nothing submissive about his physical presence. He looked like he could tear the room apart without effort. Cromwell spoke to both of us. You both understand why you're here. The Queen needs to conceive an heir to secure the succession. Thomas, you've been chosen to assist in this matter due to your physical attributes and your discretion. You will speak of this to no one, ever, upon pain of death. You both have your duty to perform for England. I'll return in 2 hours. He left, closing the door behind him, and I heard a bolt slide into place from the outside. We were locked in together. Silence filled the room, broken only by the crackling fire. Thomas hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. I stood frozen near the door, as far from him as the small room allowed. Finally he spoke, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a massive man. Your Majesty, I don't know what to say. Neither do I. His dark eyes met mine. I want you to know I would never have chosen this. Never wanted this. I'm a blacksmith. I work iron. I'm not meant for this. None of us chose this, I said, my voice shaking. The king commands, and we obey. But I need you to understand something, Thomas. I'm terrified. I gestured helplessly. I've been married 10 years and I'm still a virgin. The king cannot, and now I'm expected to. With you, and I don't even know you, and you're so large and I'm frightened. Thomas's expression softened into something that looked like genuine pain. Your Majesty, I swear to you on everything holy, I will not hurt you. I may look like a brute, but I'm not cruel. I've never forced myself on any woman. I won't start now, even under royal command. Then what do we do? Because they expect they'll know if nothing happens. I know. He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking as lost as I felt. Perhaps we could talk first. Get to know each other slightly. This whole situation is impossible, but maybe it would be less terrifying if we at least introduced ourselves properly. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Introduced ourselves before conceiving a child together, before committing adultery under royal order. Yes, he pulled out one of the chairs from the table. Would you sit? You're shaking so badly, I'm afraid you'll collapse. I sat, grateful for the support. Thomas took the other chair, which creaked under his weight but held. Even sitting, he towered over me. His presence was overwhelming. But as I looked at his face, I noticed the gentleness in his eyes, the careful way he kept his distance despite the small space. Tell me about yourself, I said, desperately needing to think about anything other than why we were here. What do you want to know, Your Majesty? Your name is Thomas Garrett. Yes, Your Majesty. I'm the master blacksmith here at the castle. I've held this position for 7 years, since I was 23. So you're 30 now. Yes, Your Majesty. 3 years older than me. Where are you from? A village in Yorkshire originally. My father was a blacksmith there, taught me the trade from childhood. I came to London when I was 18, looking for better opportunities, and eventually earned a position here at the royal household. Do you have family? My father died 5 years ago. My mother passed when I was a boy. I have 2 sisters, both married in Yorkshire. I send them money when I can. No wife? No children? No, Your Majesty. I've never married. My size makes people uncomfortable. Women especially tend to be frightened of me. The work is solitary, which suits me well enough. Until now. He flinched. Yes, until now. When Lord Cromwell came to me 3 days ago and explained what the king wanted, I thought he was mad. Thought it was some kind of test of my loyalty that I was supposed to refuse. But he made it clear this was a genuine command, that refusing would mean execution for treason. So I agreed because what else could I do? The same thing I did. Agree because the alternative is worse. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Thomas said quietly, Your Majesty, can I ask you something? You can ask. The king, is it true what they say? That he cannot? Yes. Our marriage has never been consummated. For 10 years we've maintained the fiction. But the truth is Edward is impotent. His body doesn't function as it should. And now, because of his weakness, both of us are being forced into this situation to preserve the dynasty. That must have been lonely. 10 years married, but never truly a wife. It's been the defining reality of my life. I was 17 and innocent when I married, expecting a normal marriage, children, the usual progression of royal life. Instead, I got humiliation, medical examinations, constant scrutiny, and now this, being ordered to conceive with a stranger while my husband waits outside. I started crying, tears I'd been holding back for hours finally spilling over. Thomas handed me a handkerchief from his pocket, rough cloth that smelled of forge smoke and metal. I'm sorry, he said. I know my apology means nothing, that I'm part of this nightmare for you, but I am genuinely sorry. You don't deserve this, neither do you. You're being used just as much as I am. We're both tools for the king's purposes. Perhaps, but at least when this is over, I return to my forge. You have to live with whatever child results, raise it, present it to the world as the king's heir while knowing the truth. That requires more courage than I possess. I looked at him through my tears. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A brute. Someone cruel and violent who would force himself on me without care. Instead, I find someone thoughtful and kind who seems as unhappy about this as I am. Thomas smiled sadly. I read, Your Majesty, I know I'm not supposed to, that blacksmiths aren't meant to be educated, but my father taught me letters and numbers. Over the years, I've collected books, read whenever I have time. Philosophy, poetry, history. Does that surprise you? Yes, and it shouldn't. I've been as guilty as everyone else of judging you by your size and position rather than seeing the person you are. He leaned forward slightly. Your Majesty Catherine, if I may be so bold, I want to make you a promise. Whatever happens in this room, tonight or in future visits, I will never hurt you. I will never take more than you're willing to give. And if somehow we manage to create a child from this situation, I'll never claim it, never threaten you, never speak of any of this. You have my word as a man, which I know means little given the circumstances, but it's all I have to offer. His sincerity was undeniable. Something in my chest loosened slightly. The terror didn't disappear, but it became manageable. Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know. The 2 hours passed in conversation. We talked about books, about his work in the forge, about my frustrations with being decorative rather than useful, about the impossibility of our situation. When Cromwell returned to unlock the door, nothing had happened beyond talking. He looked between us suspiciously. Tomorrow evening, same time, he said curtly. The Queen will return until this duty is fulfilled. Over the next 3 weeks, I visited that chamber every evening. Sometimes we talked for the full 2 hours, building a strange friendship in that isolated space. Thomas told me about his dreams of someday owning his own forge, of creating beautiful metalwork rather than just functional tools, of a life beyond servitude. I told him about feeling trapped by my role, about wanting to be valued for my mind rather than my womb, about the loneliness of a marriage that wasn't truly a marriage. Gradually, slowly, the terror faded into something else. Trust, genuine affection, an understanding that we were both victims of circumstance trying to survive impossible demands. On the 8th visit, something shifted. We were talking about poetry. Thomas had been reading Chaucer, struggling with the Middle English but persisting because he loved the stories. He recited a passage from the Knight's Tale, his deep voice giving the words unexpected beauty. You have a gift for that, I said, for finding meaning in language, for making old words sound vital. It's one of the few pleasures I have, Your Majesty. Books and words and ideas that take me beyond the forge, beyond my station. Do you ever think about what your life might have been if you'd been born differently? All the time. If I'd been born to a noble family instead of a blacksmith's. If I'd had education and opportunity instead of just strength and skill. But those thoughts are pointless. We are who we are, where we are. And yet here we are, a queen and a blacksmith, locked in a room together because the king commands it. The absurdity of it never quite fades. No, he looked at me with those dark, gentle eyes. But perhaps there's something less absurd in the fact that we've become, I don't want to presume, but perhaps friends. I think we have become friends, Thomas. The strangest friendship imaginable, but genuine nonetheless. That night when Cromwell unlocked the door, I stayed a few minutes longer than necessary. Something had changed between Thomas and me. The assignment was no longer just a royal command to endure. It had become something more complicated. On the 12th visit, I made a decision. We had been talking for over an hour when I interrupted Thomas mid-sentence. Thomas, we need to address what we've been avoiding. The reason we're actually here. He fell silent. I know. I've been thinking perhaps if we continue these conversations long enough, everyone will assume the task is simply taking time. But eventually they'll lose patience. Eventually isn't yet, but it will come. So what do you propose, Your Majesty? I propose we stop pretending this is just about talking. I propose we acknowledge that duty requires more than conversation, and that perhaps it would be less terrible with someone I've come to trust and even care for than with a stranger. Catherine, he rarely used my name, only when we were at our most honest. Are you certain? I'm not certain of anything except that this will happen one way or another. Cromwell is already growing suspicious. The king is growing impatient. I'd rather it happen with you, here, in a way that preserves some shred of dignity, than be forced into something worse. I stood from my chair and moved toward him, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. He stood as well, towering over me, his massive frame somehow gentle despite its size. If we do this, he said quietly, we do it at your pace. You tell me what you can bear. You remain in control as much as possible given the circumstances. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. Thomas reached out slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted. When I didn't move, he cupped my face with one enormous hand, thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "You're the bravest person I've ever known," he whispered. Then he kissed me, gentle and careful, as if I were made of glass. That night, we fulfilled the king's command. Thomas was extraordinarily patient, constantly asking if I was comfortable, if I wanted to stop, making sure I felt safe despite the fundamental violation of the situation. When it was over, I lay in his arms and cried. Not from pain, he had been far more gentle than I'd imagined possible, but from the sheer overwhelming complexity of emotions. Relief that it was done, shame at the adultery even though it was commanded, gratitude toward Thomas for his kindness, and something else I couldn't name, something that felt dangerously like affection. The visits continued twice more over the following week before the court physicians confirmed what we'd accomplished. I was pregnant. The announcement was made with great celebration. The king appeared overjoyed, embracing me publicly, praising God for finally blessing our marriage with the heir England needed. Court festivities lasted 3 days. Nobles who'd been positioning themselves for succession fights suddenly proclaimed their undying loyalty to the crown. Richard's faction dissolved overnight. A pregnant queen meant a legitimate heir, which meant stability and the end of succession crisis. Only 4 people knew the truth: Edward, Cromwell, Thomas, and me. We never spoke of it again. Thomas returned to his forge. I returned to my duties as queen. Edward treated me with renewed respect and gratitude, as if I'd saved his kingdom, which I supposed I had. She was young and fertile, but after 10 years the king could not produce an heir. To save the dynasty, he made a dark pact. He locked the queen in a room with the castle blacksmith, a giant man of brute strength. The child born 9 months later had dark eyes that the king could never deny. This became the official fiction we maintained, that the royal marriage had finally produced fruit after a decade of waiting, that God had blessed England with an heir, that everything was perfectly normal. I carried the child through the summer and autumn of 1540. My pregnancy was healthy and uncomplicated, monitored constantly by physicians who reported every detail to the king. Edward was attentive in public, playing the role of expectant father with conviction. In private, he and I maintained our strange companionable relationship. We never discussed Thomas or the circumstances of conception. We simply focused on preparing for the child's arrival and managing the kingdom. Thomas, I saw occasionally around the castle. We never spoke beyond formal greetings. Your Majesty, Master Garrett. The distance was necessary and excruciating. I found myself thinking about him constantly, remembering his gentleness, his intelligence, the way he'd made an impossible situation bearable. I told myself it was simply gratitude, natural affection for someone who treated me with kindness. I refused to examine it more deeply than that. On December 20th, 1540, I went into labor. The birth was difficult, lasting 18 hours, but the child was healthy. A son, weighing nearly 10 pounds, with a powerful cry that echoed through the birthing chamber. The physicians cleaned him and placed him in my arms, and I looked down at my son for the first time. He was beautiful, perfect, and he had his father's eyes. Not Edward's pale blue Tudor eyes, but Thomas's dark brown eyes that looked almost black in certain light. The shape of the face was different too, broader and stronger than Edward's narrow aristocratic features. Anyone who looked closely would see the truth written in the child's appearance. But no one looked closely. They saw what they wanted to see, what they needed to see. The king's heir born at last, resembling his mother's coloring rather than his father's, which was common enough to explain away. Edward came to the birthing chamber an hour after delivery. He looked down at the baby in my arms, and I saw the flash of recognition in his eyes. He knew. He saw Thomas's features reflected in the child's face, but he smiled and lifted the baby carefully, holding him with surprising tenderness. "My son," he said loudly for the physicians in attendance to hear. "My heir, Prince Henry, named for my grandfather. May he live long and rule well." In that moment, Edward claimed the child fully. Whatever doubts he had, whatever he saw in those dark eyes, he buried beneath the necessity of succession. This baby was legally his son, the heir to the throne, and that legal fiction would become reality through sheer will and royal authority. The christening took place 3 days later in Westminster Abbey. Prince Henry was baptized before the gathered nobility, proclaimed heir to the throne, celebrated across England. Thomas was there, standing at the back of the cathedral among the castle servants. I saw him watching as the archbishop poured holy water over his biological son's head, saw the pain and pride and resignation in his face. Our eyes met for just a moment across the crowded cathedral, a moment of shared knowledge that this child, this prince, was ours in truth but could never be acknowledged as such. Then the moment passed. Thomas disappeared back into the crowd, back to his forge, back to the life of a blacksmith who'd done his duty for the crown and would live with the secret until death. Prince Henry grew quickly, a healthy, robust child who showed his father's strength from infancy. By 6 months, he was larger than most year-old babies. By a year, he was walking early, displaying physical coordination that delighted his tutors. By 2, he was speaking in full sentences, showing intelligence that impressed everyone at court. And always, he had those dark eyes that marked him as different from the fair Tudor line. Edward doted on him publicly, playing the proud father with genuine affection that wasn't entirely performance. He loved Henry in his way, loved what the child represented even if he knew the biological truth. As Henry grew older, the king spent hours with him, teaching him statecraft and strategy, preparing him for eventual rule. I raised my son with love and fear in equal measure. Love because he was mine, the child I'd never thought I'd have. Fear because his existence was built on lies, and lies eventually unravel. I watched him constantly for signs of Thomas's temperament, his gentleness, his intelligence. I found them all there, woven through with my own traits, creating a child who was brilliant and kind and far too perceptive. When Henry was 3 years old, I saw Thomas again properly for the first time since conception. I'd been walking in the castle gardens, Henry playing nearby with his nursemaid, when Thomas emerged from the blacksmith shop carrying a repaired gate. He stopped when he saw us, froze completely, staring at the child who was playing with wooden soldiers on the grass. "Your Majesty," he bowed formally. "Master Garrett." Henry, curious about the enormous man, ran over. "You're very big," he announced with a child's blunt honesty. "Are you a giant?" "I'm just a blacksmith, young prince. I work in the forge making things from metal." Henry's eyes lit up. "What kind of things?" "Tools, gates, horseshoes. Sometimes decorative pieces if I have time and inspiration." "I want to see." "Can I see your forge?" "Henry," I called, "come back here. You mustn't bother Master Garrett. He's working." "It's no bother, Your Majesty." Thomas's voice was carefully neutral. "If you permit, I could show the prince some simple metalwork. It might be educational." I hesitated, knowing I should refuse, knowing any connection between Thomas and Henry was dangerous. But I couldn't deny the longing in Thomas's eyes, the desire to spend even a few minutes with his son. "Very well, a brief visit only." The 3 of us walked to the forge together. Thomas showed Henry the anvil, the hammers, the fire that turned iron malleable. He demonstrated shaping a simple hook, letting Henry hold a small hammer and tap the metal under careful supervision. The child was fascinated, asking endless questions that Thomas answered with patience and enthusiasm. Watching them together, seeing the resemblance in their faces, their gestures, their dark eyes reflecting the forge fire identically, I felt my heart breaking. This should have been Thomas's life, teaching his son his trade, watching him grow, being acknowledged as father. Instead, he had stolen moments in a blacksmith shop, while I held the terrible secret, and Edward played the role of father to another man's child. We stayed for 20 minutes before duty called me back. Henry hugged Thomas goodbye unself-consciously, and I saw tears in the blacksmith's eyes as he awkwardly patted the child's back. "Thank you, Master Garrett," I said formally, "for the educational demonstration. The honor was mine, Your Majesty." He looked at me, and in that look was everything we couldn't say. "I love him. I see myself in him. This is agony and joy combined." "I see it too," I wanted to say. "He's wonderful, and he's yours, and you'll never be able to claim him." But I just nodded and took Henry's hand and led him away. That night, Edward came to my chambers, something he rarely did anymore. "We need to discuss something," he said. "About Henry, about Thomas Garrett." I felt ice in my stomach. What about him? Edward paced the room. I saw you today, in the forge with the blacksmith and our son. It was innocent. Henry wanted to see how metal was worked. Nothing is innocent where that man is concerned, Catherine. Every time Henry is near him, people might notice the resemblance. Someone clever enough could start asking questions. Are you ordering me to keep them apart? I'm ordering you to be careful. Thomas Garrett is a good man who served us loyally in the most difficult circumstance imaginable. I don't want to punish him by sending him away. But Henry cannot become attached to him, cannot start seeking him out. The risk is too great. I understand. Good. Edward stopped pacing, looked at me directly. Do you have feelings for him? For the blacksmith? The question shocked me. Why would you ask that? Because I see how you look when his name is mentioned. Because you agreed to visit that chamber more times than was strictly necessary. Because I know you, Catherine, and I know when you care about someone. I don't know what I feel. Honest words torn from somewhere deep. Gratitude, certainly. Respect. Affection of a kind. But I'm your wife and queen, and whatever I might feel is irrelevant. Is it? Sometimes. I think you should have had a real marriage, with someone who could be a proper husband, a normal life instead of this strange arrangement we've built. But that's not the life we have. We have this marriage, this kingdom, this son, and we make the best of it because that's what duty requires. Yes, he nodded slowly. That's exactly what duty requires. The years passed. Henry grew from child to boy to young man, displaying the intelligence and strength that would serve him well as future king. Edward aged faster than he should, the stresses of rule taking their toll. I remained queen, managing household and politics, raising my son, living with secrets. Thomas continued working in the forge, our paths crossing occasionally in formal contexts. We never spoke privately again after that visit when Henry was 3. The distance was necessary and unbearable in equal measure. In 1550, when Henry was 9, Edward fell seriously ill. The physicians diagnosed a wasting disease, something in his blood that was slowly killing him. He had perhaps a year to live, maybe less. He began putting his affairs in order, ensuring Henry's succession would be undisputed. One evening, Edward called me to his bedside. "Catherine," he said, his voice weak, "when I'm gone, you'll be regent until Henry comes of age. You'll essentially rule England for 6 or 7 years. I know. I've been preparing for that possibility. There's something else, something I need to tell you while I still have strength." "What is it?" "Thomas Garrett. I've provided for him in my will. A generous pension, land in Yorkshire, enough to retire comfortably if he chooses. Why? Because he gave England its heir. Because he was kind to my wife when he could have been cruel. Because he's kept silent for a decade when speaking would have destroyed us all. He deserves better than to die in a forge." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just if something happens and Henry ever needs to know the truth, tell him his father, both his fathers, did what they thought was right. Tell him he was wanted and loved, even if the circumstances of his birth were complicated. I promise." Edward died 3 months later in August 1550. The kingdom mourned. Henry, at 9 years old, was crowned King of England with me serving as regent. The succession was smooth, undisputed. Richard had died 2 years earlier, and no one seriously challenged Henry's legitimacy. We buried Edward with full honors in Westminster Abbey. The funeral was massive, attended by nobles from across Europe. I stood beside Henry and watched them lower my husband into the crypt. Edward had been my companion, if not my lover, my friend, if not my passion, the father of my child-in-law, if not in blood. I grieved his loss genuinely, even as I acknowledged the complicated truth of our relationship. After the funeral, I found Thomas in the castle courtyard. He'd been among the household staff required to attend. He bowed formally. "Your Majesty, my condolences on your loss, and mine on yours. You served the king faithfully." He was a good man in many ways. Yes, he was. We stood in awkward silence. Finally, Thomas said quietly, "The king left me a pension. Land. I'm leaving London next month, returning to Yorkshire." "I know. He told me before he died. So this is goodbye." "Yes." He looked at me with those dark eyes Henry had inherited. "Your Majesty, Catherine, I need to say something even though I have no right." "What?" "I loved you. From those evenings locked in that room together to this day, I've loved you. Not just as the mother of my child, but as the woman who talked to me about philosophy, who saw me as human rather than just a blacksmith. I know nothing can come of it. I know my place. But I needed to say it once before I disappear from your life forever. Thomas, my voice broke. I loved you too. Love you still, if I'm honest. But we're who we are. I'm Queen Regent. You're the man who gave me the greatest gift I could receive, Thomas finished. A son who will be king. That's enough. It has to be. He bowed one final time, turned and walked away. I watched him go. This gentle giant who'd been thrust into an impossible situation and had handled it with more grace and kindness than anyone had right to expect. A month later, he left for Yorkshire. I never saw him again. I ruled as regent for 7 years, guiding England through political challenges, economic reforms, religious tensions. Henry, under my tutelage, grew into a capable young leader. At 16 in 1556, he took full royal authority, and I stepped back into a more traditional role as Queen Mother. Henry ruled well. He was intelligent, capable, fair, combining his biological father's strength and gentleness with his mother's political acumen and his legal father's strategic thinking. He married at 18, produced heirs, strengthened England's position in Europe. People called him Henry the Strong, noting his unusual physical power and his decisive leadership. I watched my son rule and thought about the 3 people whose decisions had made his reign possible. Edward, who'd swallowed his pride and arranged an unconventional solution. Thomas, who'd given his biology and then stepped aside. And me, who'd borne the child and carried the secret and raised the king. In 1565, when I was 52, news came from Yorkshire. Thomas Garrett had died peacefully in his sleep at his estate. He'd never married, had lived quietly as a gentleman farmer, had been beloved in his community for his kindness and generosity. The letter from Yorkshire also contained a package, a small wooden box addressed to me, to be delivered upon Thomas's death. Inside was a single item, a metal rose, forged from iron, delicate and perfect, every petal shaped with extraordinary skill, a blacksmith's masterpiece, and a note in Thomas's handwriting. For Catherine, made in the forge the day after Henry was born, kept all these years. You were the rose that bloomed in impossible circumstances. You gave me joy even in the midst of duty. Thank you for our son. I hope you can forgive the circumstances that brought us together. I never stopped loving you. Thomas, I held the iron rose and wept. For the man who'd loved me. For the marriage I'd never had. For the choices we'd all made in service of duty and dynasty. For the beautiful, complicated truth beneath the official lies. Henry found me crying in my chambers, holding the rose. He was 24 now, king in his own right, father to 2 children. Mother, what's wrong? I looked at my son, this man who'd grown into everything we'd hoped. His dark eyes so like his father's. His strength and gentleness, his capability to rule. I need to tell you something, I said, about your birth, about who you really are. And I told him everything. The king's impotence, the command to conceive with the blacksmith, Thomas's kindness and intelligence, the secret we'd kept for 25 years, the truth about his biological father who'd just died in Yorkshire. Henry listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, Did my father, my biological father, did he love you? Yes. And you loved him? Yes. Henry looked down at the iron rose in my hands. Then I'm glad that I came from love, even if it was complicated. Glad that both men who raised me, one legally and one biologically, were good people trying to do right in impossible circumstances. He took my hands. I'm Henry V, King of England, son of Edward and Catherine by law, son of Thomas and Catherine by blood. All of that makes me who I am. I wouldn't change any of it. You're wise beyond your years. I learned from the best. 3 parents, each teaching me different things. Edward taught me statecraft. You taught me compassion and intelligence. And Thomas, even though I barely knew him, he gave me strength and gentleness. I carry all of you inside me. We never spoke publicly about the truth. Henry remained legally Edward's son, and that legal fiction continued. But privately, Henry acknowledged his heritage. He commissioned a memorial for Thomas in Yorkshire, a statue of a blacksmith at his forge with an inscription, Thomas Garrett, master craftsman, who served the crown with loyalty and built things of lasting strength. Henry also commissioned a second iron rose, identical to the one Thomas had made for me, and wore it as a personal symbol. When people asked about it, he said it represented strength forged in fire, which was true in more ways than anyone knew. I died in 1570, at age 57, surrounded by my children and grandchildren. My last thoughts were of three men: Edward, who'd given me a crown and a strange but genuine friendship; Thomas, who'd given me love and the child I'd thought impossible; and Henry, the son who'd grown into a king worthy of both his father's legacies. They buried me in Westminster Abbey beside Edward, honoring the legal marriage that had shaped my life. But in my hand they placed Thomas's iron rose. The court assumed it was simply a treasured possession. Only Henry knew what it truly meant: a symbol of love that had bloomed in darkness, strength forged under impossible pressure, beauty created from duty and pain and unexpected grace. The historical records of this period are complex and sometimes contradictory. Edward V's reign from 1530 to 1550 is documented in palace records, though medical details about his personal health were kept private, as was customary for monarchs. Queen Catherine Ashford's marriage to Edward in 1530 and the birth of Prince Henry in 1540 are recorded in official chronicles, though the circumstances of conception were never publicly questioned. Thomas Garrett appears in castle employment records as master blacksmith from 1533 to 1551, with records of his retirement to Yorkshire on a royal pension. The pension grant was unusually generous for a craftsman, noted in treasury documents but not explained. Prince Henry's coronation in 1550 at age 9 and his subsequent reign as Henry V until his death in 1585 are well documented. Contemporary accounts frequently mention his unusual dark coloring and physical strength, which differed from typical Tudor features, but these were attributed to his mother's Ashford bloodline. The iron rose mentioned in Queen Catherine's burial records exists in the royal collection at the Tower of London, though its origin and significance weren't publicly known until the 20th century, when private letters from Henry V to his children were discovered and analyzed. These letters, dated between 1570 and 1585, reference the true circumstances of his birth and his biological father's identity. In 1923, historian Margaret Thornberry published The Secret Succession, examining evidence that Henry V was the biological son of Thomas Garrett rather than Edward V. The book created significant controversy in academic circles, but was ultimately accepted as credible based on primary source documents, DNA analysis of remains, and the detailed personal correspondence preserved by Henry's descendants. The story has since been studied as an example of how dynastic necessity, royal impotence, and unconventional solutions shaped English succession, and how three people navigated impossible circumstances with surprising grace and created a legacy that lasted generations. Thomas Garrett's memorial statue still stands in Yorkshire, and the iron roses he created remain in museum collections as examples of exceptional metalwork from the period. Queen Catherine's private writings, discovered in 1958, provided additional confirmation of the relationship and the genuine affection that developed between her and Thomas despite the commanded nature of their initial encounters. The letters reveal a woman of intelligence and strength who found love in unexpected circumstances and raised a son who would become one of England's most capable monarchs precisely because he inherited the best qualities of all three parents who shaped his life. This is the story of Catherine Ashford and Thomas Garrett, whose impossible love created a king and whose choices under extraordinary pressure demonstrate that sometimes the most radical solutions produce the most lasting results. Catherine was deemed unmarriageable in effect by an impotent husband who couldn't produce heirs. Thomas was a blacksmith commanded to perform a duty no subject should bear. But together they created Henry V, a king who ruled with strength and wisdom, who honored all three of his parents, and who proved that love and intelligence matter more than the circumstances of birth. If this story moves you, if you believe that people thrust into impossible situations can find grace and dignity, if you believe that love can bloom even in commanded circumstances and create something beautiful and lasting, subscribe now to discover more hidden histories that challenge our assumptions about the past. Leave a comment sharing what aspect of Catherine and Thomas's story resonates most with you. Was it the king's radical solution, the unexpected love between queen and blacksmith, or the son who honored all his parents? Your engagement helps preserve these complex human stories that textbooks often ignore. Hit subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us in exploring the complicated, beautiful truths behind royal dynasties and the real people who shaped history through impossible choices.